And Congressman James Clyburn is accusing detractors of using racially charged dog whistles to undermine his bid for House Majority Whip, a position that he held from 2007 to 2011. In an interview with McClatchy, Clyburn said, quote, "I don't know where it's all coming from, but someone came to me over the weekend and told me that when I was whipped before, I was a figurehead." Clyburn also alleges he was called token. He's the only black member of the leadership team in Congress there. Here to sort all of it out for us, who better than Congressman James Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina, Assistant Democratic Leader, and Jake Sherman as well, co-author, of course, of Politico Playbook. Congressman, let me start with you. And this idea, again, from Ms. Pelosi, that she's got the votes, and this reporting that Marcia Fudge of Ohio, your friend, says she's been overwhelmed by support. Who is it, Marcia Fudge or Nancy Pelosi, that's the next Speaker of the House?
Well, Craig, thank you so much for having me. I think you know that I've been supporting Nancy Pelosi throughout this campaign. I've supported her throughout her leadership bids, and I continue to support her. Marcia Fudge is a very good friend, and I, like so many others here on the Hill, saw her ruminating last night about this. Spoke with her at length this morning, and she's still ruminating. And so there's no announcement. She's not a candidate. She knows that I'm supporting Nancy Pelosi, and she tells me this morning she continues to support me very vigorously to be the whip in the next Congress. And so I think that we'll see how all this plays out. In these leadership races, you have these kinds of things to pop up throughout the process, and I suspect you'll have some more before we get to a vote.
I want to go back to that McClatchy article because your contention here that some of your Democratic your colleagues are using dog whistles and words like token. What do you make of that? I mean, do you think there's actually something there, or do you think that just might just be rumor?
No, I don't think it's rumor at all. I do think that those words were used because it's not the first time. You know, when I ran for whip before, I heard some of that. People were saying to me that an African American did not have the capacity to raise the kind of money that you need to raise in that capacity. I proved them all wrong then. In this cycle, we heard some of the same stuff. My goal by the DCCC was to raise $1.5 million for DCCC. I raised over $7 million. My dues were $600,000 a year. I paid $750,000 in dues. And I gave directly to other candidates and fellow colleagues $1.1 million directly from my bank account into theirs. So this whole notion that I'm some kind of a token is a bunch of poppycock. You expect those things appropriately to be used in these campaigns, and I expect to hear dog whistles in campaigns. I never expect to hear it coming from friends and supporters of my colleagues.
And to be clear, these are Democrats we're talking about too, right? We're not talking about folks on the other side of the aisle.
Well, what I heard over the weekend, and it was Saturday when I got a phone call from a colleague Saturday saying that that was being repeated by a fellow Democrat. Where that person got it from, I don't know. Now, the person I don't think was here when I was Majority Whip before, and probably repeating something somebody told them. But, you know, as we say down south where you and I are from, I'll let my work speak for me.
Amen to that. I'll bring in Jake Sherman here for a second, Congressman. Don't go anywhere. Jake, I want to call our viewers and listeners on Sirius Satellite Radio, I want to call their attention to this new CNN poll. It shows that Democratic voters are almost evenly split over whether Pelosi should be Speaker. 44% say Pelosi's the best choice, 46% saying they would prefer a different Democrat. Here's the thing, Jake Sherman. In the upper chamber, Chuck Schumer loses a seat or two, and no one's calling for Chuck Schumer's head. Democrats pick up, 35 seats, and all of a sudden you've got a significant number of people saying Nancy Pelosi maybe shouldn't be the Speaker. Why is that?
It's a good question. I mean, Republicans have spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars over the last decade or so beating up on Nancy Pelosi in campaigns around the country. I was on the road for almost all of October, and every single place I went, Nancy Pelosi was a campaign issue that Republicans had introduced into the race. And if you talk to Nancy Pelosi supporters, and I'm sure Mr. Clyburn would agree with this, that some of the animus toward Pelosi is because Republicans are forcing Democrats to answer whether they support her. Now, whether you are a supporter of Nancy Pelosi's or not, the Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, and Steny Hoyer leadership team from 2010 to 2012 passed massive pieces of legislation into law. Whether you like them or not, you have to recognize that the health care bill, the Wall Street Dodd-Frank bill, and they passed a climate bill that died in the Senate. But I mean, these were big pieces of legislation that took a lot of muscling to get through Congress. So there's no question that they are an efficient team. I think what a lot of Democrats that I've been talking to over the last couple days, what they want to hear is, what does it mean that Nancy Pelosi will be a transitional figure? Could she put a little bit more meat on those bones? She has said it. That's something that she has offered up. What does she mean by that, and how long is that transition? Because no matter what you think of Pelosi or anybody in the leadership, there definitely is a sense that that they want to transition to a younger generation. I think everybody, including Mr. Clyburn, would agree that younger generation has not been groomed because they've not been in the leadership circle yet, and there's a lot that you learn once you're in the leadership that you don't really know in the rank and file.
Jake, let's put your question to the congressman. This idea, Congressman Clyburn, that Ms. Pelosi is going to be a transitional leader. What does that mean? How do you understand that?
Well, Nancy has said that, and so has Steny Hoyer, and so have I. In fact, I may have been the first one to use the term transitional, because I believe in that. I come out of a region of the country where it's pretty difficult to practice progressive politics, but we've survived it. And I believe very strongly in a combination of capacity and wisdom in order to get us to where we need to be. And I think that's what transition means. The young people coming in have the capacity, and we should start giving them the practical experiences that is needed to develop the wisdom and the know-how to move forward. And if I'm elected a Democratic whip, I will be immediately building a stable of deputy whips with young people who will learn how to count votes, who will learn how to interact with fellow members both on our side and across the aisle in order to be effective legislators and effective office holders and leadership positions going forward. So that's what transition means to me, to immediately put in place a process by which this can begin to occur.